1 hour, no power. Imagine the lights going out not because of a storm, but because a cyber attack takes down the American grid. This is not science fiction. According to Reuters, U.S. intelligence has already identified groups like Volt Typhoon and Salt Typhoon, linked to China, that have infiltrated telecom networks and infrastructure companies. They have the capability to flip a switch and change daily life overnight. The question is not if America is vulnerable. The question is, what happens to you and your family when the lights stay out? To date, we are not talking about missiles, submarines, or battlefields far away. We are talking about something much quieter and much closer, the moment when an invisible hand reaches into your home and takes away electricity. The Washington Post reported this year that Chinese hackers had gained access to systems tied to power and water utilities in the United States. The FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency have warned that adversaries are mapping vulnerabilities now, not for fun, but for leverage in a crisis. That means the grid itself is no longer just about storms and accidents. It is a battlefield without smoke. What we are going to do together is simple. We will trace how a cyber blackout could unfold, what it would look like in the first 24 hours, how it escalates after a week, and what it means for Americans in practical, personal terms. Along the way, I will show you not just the risks, but the steps you can take right now to build what I call your resilience margin, the difference between collapse and calm. And by the end, we will reflect on the bigger paradox of our time: peace in words, escalation in deeds. When you hear blackout, you might think of storms knocking down lines or ice freezing transformers. But in the digital age, the grid is not just wires and poles. It is managed by complex control systems that rely on software and communication links. According to the BBC, in 2015, Ukraine experienced exactly this when hackers believed to be Russian remotely disabled substations, plunging more than 200,000 people into darkness. That was the first confirmed blackout caused by a cyber attack. It showed the world that power grids are not only physical, they are digital fortresses that can be breached. In the United States, the Department of Homeland Security has acknowledged that groups linked to Russia, China, and Iran have all probed American grid operators. The New York Times explained that Volt Typhoon, a group tied to China, has focused not on stealing data, but on preparing for possible disruption, planting footholds in systems that could be activated later. That is why experts now speak of the risk of a digital blackout. You do not need to bomb a plant if you can lock the operators out of their own control room. And once the lights go out, the shock is not only technical, it is psychological, because power is trust, and when trust collapses, so does order. Are you ready to see how that shock would spread? Picture this. It is evening in your city. You are cooking dinner, kids are watching television, your phone is charging. Suddenly, everything dies. At first you think it is local, maybe a storm, maybe a blown fuse. But when you step outside, you see the whole block dark, the traffic lights out, the gas station sign gone. Within the first hour, hospitals switch to emergency generators. Supermarkets cannot process payments. The registers freeze. Gas pumps stop working because they require electricity to move fuel. Banks automatically lock systems to prevent fraud when their networks lose stability. According to CNN, even short blackouts can cause ATMs and payment apps to fail instantly. Meanwhile, your phone still works, but data is slow because towers are overloaded by millions of people calling at once. This is the information storm. Confusion spreads faster than facts. Social media fills with rumors, videos of fires, unverified claims of sabotage. If you remember the Colonial Pipeline incident in 2021, you know how quickly people panic. That hack was criminal, not geopolitical, and still it caused gas lines in several states. Now imagine that combined with a power outage across multiple cities. This is when the first wave hits you directly. Not bombs, not missiles, but silence in your appliances and doubt in your mind. And the question comes fast. How long could your family go if the fridge went dark tonight? After the first day, shock turns into something deeper, what I call the economic echo. Every day without power multiplies the cost, not just in dollars, but in confidence. According to Bloomberg, global markets react instantly to blackouts in major economies. Oil prices jump, food distribution slows, and investors rush to safe assets like gold. That ripple would be felt in your gas bill, your grocery store, and your retirement account. Meanwhile, the supply chains that keep America running are built on just-in-time logistics. Warehouses do not hold months of stock. Trucks rely on digital systems for routing and payment. Within a week, deliveries slow, shelves thin, and local officials impose rationing in some areas. Remember, this is not hypothetical. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has run exercises assuming cyber attacks could knock out parts of the grid for weeks. The second part of the economic echo is international. Russia, Iran, or China could time cyber disruption to coincide with other provocations, stretching U.S. response capacity. The Atlantic Council has warned that hybrid warfare is about creating pressure across domains. Imagine a blackout in New York while a crisis flares in Taiwan. Which fire do you fight first? The point is simple. A cyber blackout does not just dim lights. It multiplies risks worldwide. And here is the question. If America's grid was dark for 1 week, what would change first in your life, your bank account, your pantry, or your patience? The danger of a blackout is not only national. It can be targeted and uneven, like spots on a leopard. In 2015, Ukraine's grid was hit again with malware that shut down more than 50 substations. In 2019, The Guardian reported that U.S. utilities in the Midwest faced cyber intrusions that forced them to switch operations to manual control. That means attackers already have the map. They are already inside. And the weakest link decides the chain. Think of the Colonial Pipeline again. That was one company, one hack, and yet millions of Americans saw gas stations run dry. Imagine that, but with pharmacies unable to refill prescriptions, or airports grounding flights because radar systems cannot connect. According to the Department of Energy, 70% of U.S. pharmaceuticals depend on cold chain logistics, refrigeration every step of the way. No power means no stability, and no stability means lives at risk. Think of seniors who rely on oxygen machines, children who need refrigerated insulin. Think of your own neighborhood. If the power grid went down for weeks, what would it mean for your family? What about for your city? And here is the darker thought. If enemies know that chaos comes not from bombs but from silence, why would they not use it? This is where clarity matters. Preparedness is not panic. It is patience. According to Ready.gov, the official guidance from FEMA, every household should have at least 3 days of water and food supplies. Emergency managers suggest 1 gallon of water per person per day. That is the baseline. But think in terms of margin. The resilience margin is the difference between families who can last 3 days and those who can last 3 weeks. It is what buys you calm while others panic. What builds that margin? A mix of simple steps. A small solar charger for phones, a radio that works without the internet, cash in small bills in case cards fail, a pantry with shelf-stable foods like rice, beans, pasta, and canned proteins. According to the Red Cross, rotating these supplies regularly is the best way to keep them fresh. Medical preparedness is just as important. Ask your doctor about extended refills if you rely on critical medications. Keep a paper list of contacts in case your phone dies. And have a family plan. Decide now where you will meet if you cannot call or text. These are not glamorous tools. They are basic, but they turn panic into patience. So ask yourself, do you know your own resilience margin? Would you last 2 days or 2 weeks? Step back for a moment. A blackout is not only about candles and batteries. It is about deterrence. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, cyber attacks on infrastructure are now considered part of national strategy by Russia and China. Iran has been accused of targeting water facilities in Israel with similar tactics. This is the fog of escalation. In past wars, escalation was about tanks and missiles. Today, escalation can live in wires and code. That matters for the United States because credibility is at stake. If allies see America unable to protect its own grid, deterrence weakens. If adversaries see panic in American cities after a week without power, they may be tempted to push further. And if citizens themselves lose trust in institutions, the political cost could be as high as the economic one. According to Pew Research, trust in government is already near historic lows. Add a cyber blackout, and the risk is not only external, it is internal division. The battlefield is no longer far away. It is in our homes, in our hospitals, in our banks. And that is why understanding this risk is not optional. It is essential. Now bring it home. Imagine you wake up one morning after 7 days without power. Your fridge is empty, not because you forgot to shop, but because the supply chain stopped. You drive to the supermarket and find shelves thinned, like after a hurricane. If you lived through the early days of the pandemic in 2020, you remember how fast toilet paper, pasta, and canned goods disappeared. Multiply that pressure, but now add no cash registers, no digital payments, and no way for trucks to deliver reliably. You stop at the gas station, the pumps are closed. Pharmacies post signs saying no refills until deliveries resume. Meanwhile, neighbors gather around radios to hear official updates. This is not the apocalypse. It is the quiet grind of disruption. But quiet does not mean harmless. Think of the Texas blackout in 2021. Millions of Americans lost power during a cold snap, not because of war, but because of weather. People melted snow to flush toilets. Families burned furniture for heat, and more than 200 people died. That was a regional failure. Now imagine the same sense of helplessness, but stretched across multiple states by design, not by accident. Seniors who rely on oxygen machines would be at risk within hours. Parents searching for insulin for their children would find empty refrigerators at pharmacies. Hospitals, even with backup generators, would struggle after days without fresh supplies. This is where emotions collide with survival. Families start arguing about resources. Do you share your last cans with neighbors, or do you save them for your kids? Communities strain under rumors. Someone says the power will be back tomorrow. Someone else swears it will take months. Without clarity, trust erodes. And when trust erodes, conflict begins. Generations who lived through Vietnam remember how that war divided households. Iraq and Afghanistan left their own scars on military families and communities. Now imagine division triggered not by foreign policy debates, but by daily survival. A son wants to line up for water rations. The father thinks it is dangerous. A neighbor wants to pool resources. Another insists on keeping them private. That silent friction is as destabilizing as any external attack. And then there is the financial layer. With power out, ATMs remain dead, credit card readers frozen. According to CNN, even short outages cause instant failures in digital payments. Multiply that by weeks, and you face a cash economy overnight. How many Americans today keep even $50 in small bills at home? The number is shrinking, which means reliance on fragile systems is growing. This is the deeper fear. It is not only about food or gas. It is about identity and resilience. Are we still a society that pulls together when crisis hits, like in the hours after 9/11? Or are we a society that fractures, like during the lockdown debates of 2020? If power stayed out for 1 month, would America rediscover unity, or would it pull apart? The truth is, disruption does not need to last forever to leave a scar. Even after the Texas blackout ended, families bought generators, stored water, and never looked at the grid the same way again. A cyber blackout of national scale would not only test systems, it would test faith. Faith in government, faith in neighbors, faith in the future. And here's the question for you. If tomorrow morning the lights went out, how would your street look after 1 week? Would you see neighbors helping each other with barbecues and supplies? Or would you see suspicion, arguments, and fear? This is why the fear is not only technical, it is personal. It is about whether we still believe in each other when the lights go out. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a paradox. Leaders talk of peace, but actions show escalation. The last time the world spoke of peace while preparing for war was the late 1930s. We know what followed. Today, the battlefield may not be Europe, it may be inside our own systems. And the lesson is sharp. Peace in words, escalation in deeds. That is the paradox of our time. The cyber blackout is not a prophecy, it is a possibility. The wise prepare not by panicking, but by building margin. Because when the next alert comes, you want to be the one who stays calm, not the one who freezes. Ask yourself right now, if tomorrow the lights went out, would you be ready? If the answer is no, the good news is you can change that this week and join this community of level-headed Americans who prepare without panic. And in the comments, tell us, how long do you think your family could last without power? And what is your first step to extend that margin? Because in the end, preparedness is not about fear, it is about freedom.